lives in our hearts. The Abbott government's New Look ministry will be sworn in at Government House in Canberra today. Let's go live now to our political reporter David Lipson. Dave, good morning again to you. Take us through the details.
Good to be with you, Limbo. Thanks, Nina. I'm joined now by Josh Frydenberg, who will be taking up the position of...
Thanks, David.
That portfolio area has been the most troublesome, you'd have to say, for Tony Abbott in 2014. What do you plan to do different in 2015?
No, I think we've got a good story to tell in relation to the Treasury portfolio. What we'll be focusing on is the importance of the reforms that we're putting forward, particularly about getting the budget back into surplus. I mean, we do face some cold headwinds, David. I mean, look, at MyEFO Treasury forecast for revenue was written down by $32 billion, particularly because of the collapse in the iron ore price from $90 at the time of the May budget to just over $60 today. This has had a big impact. We've got to ensure that the structural deficit, the difference between what we are spending and what we are taking as a government, is narrowed, and we'll be talking to the Australian people about the important reforms to do just that.
So how do you narrow the structural deficit? Does that mean more savings measures that are going to hit families?
Well, it's about getting the savings measures through the Senate that we've announced in the May budget, as well as looking for other savings across the board. But we can't afford big tax cuts to stimulate the economy. Government can't afford more expenditure, although we are targeting existing expenditure in key areas like infrastructure. What we need to do is the hard process of reform and deregulation, tax reform, workplace flexibility. They're the sort of issues we're looking at.
As well as selling the budget, you're also on the Expenditure Review Committee, just one of 6 people, including the Prime Minister, wielding the knife, if you like. There's not a lot of fat left, though, is there? People have already been stung pretty badly in 2014. Now you're saying there's room for more savings next year.
Look, I think a government is constantly looking for efficiencies. That's our job. I think we have to remember that in terms of job creation in the Australian economy, it's really the private sector rather than government that creates long-term sustainable jobs. So if government can be more efficient, and we've seen, for example, the consolidation of a number of our existing government bodies by Matthias Cormann, that's one of the things that we can do to find savings. But, you know, the Expenditure Review Committee is a very important committee. I'm very honoured to be on it, and I would just be doing my little bit to ensure that we run an efficient and effective government.
You also mentioned getting your measures through the Senate. The controversial ones we're all very familiar with, the GP co-payment, the higher education reforms, the changes to welfare and the pension. So the government is still very much committed to those difficult choices.
Absolutely. I mean, take the Medicare co-payment. I think that that is an important reform because it's about a price signal, just as like it is with the pharmaceutical benefit scheme, which Labor supports. So they can't be too hypocritical here. We also have to understand that the sustainability of Medicare is vitally important. $8 billion 10 years ago, $20 billion today to the taxpayer, over $30 billion in a few years' time. What's important about the new co-payment announcement that we made just a few weeks ago is the carve-outs for people who are doing it tough. So 8 million Australians are on a concession card. They're effectively exempt here, as well as pensioners, veterans and others. And I think that's a good sign to the Australian people that we've listened to their concerns and now we've responded.
In the welfare space, which is now headed up by Scott Morrison, spending growth, according to the Australian newspaper today, has been forecast at 2.4%. That's a cut in real terms, isn't it? Because it's only barely inflation. It doesn't account for population growth or the ageing population.
Well, David, a few points here. Firstly, welfare or social spending is around 35% of the budget, so it's a huge part of it. We've actually increased our welfare spend as a government. Over $4.6 billion extra was in the May budget for this year, and then for next year, over $9 billion of additional money. So we are putting more money into welfare, but that doesn't be said we can't do with important reforms, and that's the indexation you referred to, that's the earn or learn policy, that's about the incentives we're now providing to business to employ people over the age of 50, up to $10,000 for businesses, because we want to put people in jobs, and that's what Scott Morrison's big focus is, workforce participation.
We are already, though, seeing cuts, the abolishment of several important bodies, the homeless bodies, blind citizens, the Federation of Disability Organisations. Again, it's the disadvantaged who seem to be copping it here.
Not at all. There may be consolidation of bodies, but not in terms of taking away those primary functions. We need work to be done in those particular areas, but we also need just to find how to best provide those services. I mean, welfare is vitally important. Scott Morrison will be an empathetic minister. I'm very convinced of that, but he'll also be hard-nosed too when it comes to ensuring the sustainability of the welfare system over time. We need to get efficiencies so that the people who need the help get that help most.
In hindsight, and hindsight's always easy, would it have been easier for Joe Hockey in 2014 if he had had an assistant treasurer to help him with the load of his first and crucial budget?
Oh, look, it's been difficult circumstances because Matthias Cormann has done an incredibly important job as the acting Assistant Treasurer, and I think everyone from the industry to government acknowledges that he has done really well there. Arthur Sinodinos is a very distinguished member of our team, a great friend of mine, and also did really important work in that role. But we had that hiatus, which was of course not ideal, David, but we're over that now. We're now turning a fresh page with the reshuffle today, and I certainly will be doing everything I can to be supporting Joe Hockey and Matthias Cormann and the Minister for Small Business, Bruce Bilson, who's very important in this regard.
And you believe, just finally, that this is the right team,
Sure.
So things will be better for the government next year?
I think this is a really some really good changes here. I mean, to see Susan Ley come into health, she'll do a fantastic job there. Peter Dutton, a former policeman, into immigration. He's a successful minister. Obviously, Kevin Andrews in defence, very experienced, and Scott Morrison on the front line in an economic workforce participation portfolio. I think this is a refreshed stream. Simon Birmingham doing really important work around skills. We've got Karen Andrews and Kelly O'Dwyer coming in as parliamentary secretaries, Christian Porter. I mean, there are a whole suite of really good changes here, refreshes the team, and as the Prime Minister said, David, gets the focus back to jobs and families. The Australian people elected us to continue with the reform agenda. Labor bequeathed us a huge amount of debt. If we don't take these reforms now, the taxpayers today and the taxpayers tomorrow will be paying for it.
Josh Frydenberg, good luck today. Thank you.
Thanks very much, David.
And Sky News